What if I told you that Elon Musk spends his billions in ways no other billionaire dares to copy? Not even Donald Trump. While most billionaires buy penthouses and private islands, Musk buys rocket engines, underground cities, and technology meant for the next century. And if you stay until the end, you'll discover the one project Musk built that reportedly made Trump admit he had never felt envy like this before. The mindset, from PayPal millions to betting everything on rockets. Before Elon Musk became the man launching stainless steel giants into the sky, he was simply a newly minted multi-millionaire holding the aftermath of a life-changing deal. When PayPal sold for $1.5 billion, Musk personally walked away with roughly $180 million. For most people, that is the finish line, a fortune large enough to purchase mansions, private islands, or a lifetime of comfort. But Musk wasn't interested in comfort, he was interested in escape velocity. Instead of securing himself with a financial cushion, he poured more than $100 million into SpaceX, an unproven rocket company operating out of an old warehouse in El Segundo. Then he diverted another $70 million into Tesla, a car startup, burning through cash faster than it could attract believers. The remaining $10 million he sent into Solar City, aiming to decentralize energy long before renewable power was fashionable. When the transfers were complete, Musk had done what no rational financial advisor would ever approve. He put every dollar he had back into risk. Not some, not most, all. What came next tested that decision brutally. SpaceX's first rocket, Falcon 1, failed after 33 seconds of flight. The second reached higher, then spun out of control. The third attempt, made with parts Musk personally inspected, broke apart before reaching orbit. With each failure, more than $30 million of hardware and engineering vanished in flames. By the third explosion, Musk was nearly out of money. Tesla was weeks from collapse. He had payroll to meet, investors demanding answers, and a reputation turning from genius disruptor to reckless gambler. Even Donald Trump, a man never shy about bold moves, had publicly called Musk's Mars ambitions a fantasy. But Musk wasn't chasing approval, he was chasing a species-level insurance policy. On the fourth launch, with only enough capital left for one more attempt, Falcon 1 finally broke free of Earth and reached orbit. That single success didn't just save SpaceX, it saved Musk. It unlocked a NASA contract worth $1.6 billion, stabilized Tesla long enough to secure vital funding, and proved that privately funded spaceflight was not a joke, it was the future. Here is what sets Musk apart from traditional billionaires, including Trump. When he earned money, he didn't buy symbols of wealth. He bought time, trajectory, and possibility. He converted dollars into fuel, factories, and orbital calculations. He invested in the version of humanity he wanted to build, not the version he inherited. This mindset, seeing money not as security but as propulsion, is the foundation of everything Musk built after. Rockets, electric cars, neural interfaces, underground tunnels, none of them exist without that original willingness to risk every cent he had. The real question is, was this brilliance, madness, or both? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, because Elon Musk's mindset is something the world is still trying to decode. The SpaceX, a $180 billion empire built from nothing. When people talk about empires, they usually imagine marble halls, sprawling estates, or billion-dollar art collections. But Elon Musk built an empire out of metal cylinders, scorched launch pads, and a vision so audacious that even veteran aerospace CEOs dismissed it as impossible. Today, SpaceX is valued at $180 billion, making it worth more than Boeing or Lockheed Martin, companies that have dominated the skies for nearly a century. Yet this empire began with nothing more than a rented warehouse, a handful of engineers, and a founder willing to risk every dollar he owned. The scale of SpaceX's transformation becomes clearer when you look at the economics of space before Musk arrived. Launching a single rocket could cost governments up to $1 billion, with hardware that was used once and discarded into the ocean. Space was a playground for superpowers, not private companies. Musk's idea that rockets should be reusable like airplanes sounded reckless, even dangerous. But he didn't see waste, he saw inefficiency, and inefficiency was simply a problem waiting to be engineered out of existence. Starship, the giant stainless steel rocket now rising from the Texas coast, is the most radical expression of that belief. Designed to carry more mass than any vehicle in history, it aims to slash the cost of launching payloads from hundreds of millions to just a few $1 million per flight. Scaling down costs by that margin isn't an upgrade, it's a revolution. It shifts the economics of space from rare and sacred to accessible and industrial. It paves the way for mega constellations, lunar bases, and even the first attempts at colonizing Mars. But Starship's price tag also reveals something deeper about Musk's philosophy. Instead of extracting profits from SpaceX's early successes, he reinvested nearly everything into developing new engines, factories, and test sites. Where another billionaire might have purchased a $50 million penthouse or a $10 million sports car collection, Musk funneled the same money into Raptor engines and cryogenic fuel farms. Even after securing government contracts worth billions, he refused to treat SpaceX as a cash machine. Every dollar became rocket fuel, literally and figuratively. This philosophy also permeates SpaceX's infrastructure. The Starbase facility in Boca Chica didn't emerge as a polished campus. It grew like a frontier town, tents that turned into assembly bays, dirt roads that became highways for transporting 400-foot rocket stages, and small test pads that evolved into a sprawling industrial complex. Each expansion was funded by revenue from Starlink launches, NASA missions, and commercial payload. Instead of hoarding wealth, Musk recirculated it, multiplying engineering capacity with every reinvested dollar. And the result is a company operating at a pace traditional aerospace firms can't match. SpaceX now launches more rockets annually than entire countries. Reusability has turned boosters into workhorses, with some flying more than a dozen missions. Starship's eventual goal, to fly daily, would redefine transportation not just on Earth, but between worlds. The empire Musk built is not made of gold or oil or skyscrapers. It's made of velocity, iteration, and an unshakable belief that money should build infrastructure for the future, not monuments to the present. Living in a $50,000 house while controlling a multi-billion-dollar industry. If you drove past Boca Chica today, you might expect the man running a multi-billion-dollar space industry to be living in a fortress of glass and steel, guarded behind private gates and manicured lawns. Instead, you would find Elon Musk stepping out of a tiny $50,000 prefabricated home, a structure so small that most billionaires wouldn't use it as a guest room. And yet, this compact, boxable unit has become one of the most symbolic decisions of Musk's career, proof that to him, comfort is irrelevant if it slows momentum. This lifestyle didn't come out of nowhere. Musk once owned an entire portfolio of luxury estates in Los Angeles, including the famous Bel Air mansion he purchased for $23.3 million, the former Gene Wilder house, and several hillside villas valued at tens of millions more. These weren't ordinary homes, they were architectural statements, sprawling properties overlooking the city where Hollywood royalty lived. But Musk sold all of them, one by one. Each listing vanished from his name until he owned nothing but the small boxable unit anchored near Starbase. The transition from marble floors to modular walls might seem absurd for a billionaire whose companies are worth hundreds of billions, but Musk's decision wasn't financial, it was strategic. He wanted proximity. The tiny home is perched only minutes away from the launch pads, engine bays, and manufacturing tents where SpaceX tests the Raptor engines that power Starship. Instead of commuting from a mansion protected behind security gates, Musk can walk out his door and be surrounded by rocket engineers before sunrise. The $50,000 price tag also reveals something else. Musk removes anything that slows down iteration. A mansion demands staff, maintenance, landscaping, and logistics. A tiny home demands nothing. No distractions, no rituals of luxury. Just a bed, a kitchen, a folding table, and the silence necessary to think about interplanetary travel. In a world where affluent figures flex wealth through penthouses and exotic cars, Musk flexes by stripping everything down to the minimum required for focus. The contrast becomes even sharper when compared to figures like Donald Trump, whose identity is built around skyscrapers, gold-plated interiors, and the towering presence of Trump Tower, a building worth hundreds of millions. Trump uses architecture as a brand. Musk uses minimalism as a weapon. The two strategies could not be more different, yet both are crafted with intention. Living in a $50,000 home while directing an industry that moves billions every year sends a message louder than any public statement. Musk views personal comfort as negotiable, but innovation as sacred. The house symbolizes his internal calculation. Reduce the noise, compress the distance, and redirect every ounce of energy toward the mission. To him, the real luxury isn't owning mansions, it's accelerating humanity's path into space. And ironically, this tiny structure has become one of the most fascinating assets tied to Musk. not because of its monetary value, but because of what it represents. A billionaire who chooses efficiency over excess, velocity over vanity, and a $50,000 box over a palace. Mobility of power, jets, cars, and vehicles that redefine wealth. For most billionaires, vehicles are accessories, another entry in a collection, another toy in a climate-controlled garage. But for Elon Musk, mobility is a form of power, a declaration that movement itself can shape civilization. And nowhere is that clearer than in the fleet of machines he uses as extensions of his ambition. His centerpiece isn't a mansion or a yacht, it's a jet. The Gulfstream G650ER, a $70 million aircraft, serves as Musk's airborne command center. With a range of more than 7,500 miles, it allows him to leave a design review at Starbase and appear inside a Tesla gigafactory in Berlin just hours later. The jet's interior isn't dripping in gold or marble. Instead, it is designed like a mobile engineering war room. Satellite-linked systems, sound-insulated walls for confidential meetings, and enough range to cross continents without refueling. Every journey becomes strategy in motion. But Musk's relationship with vehicles goes beyond travel efficiency. He collects symbols, machines that shaped imagination long before he reshaped technology. One of the most surprising is the Lotus Esprit submarine car, made famous in the James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me. Musk purchased it for nearly $1 million at auction, not to store it behind velvet ropes, but because it represented something he refuses to let go of. The belief that impossible machines should be built, not admired from a distance. After acquiring it, Musk told engineers he wanted to make the car actually transform and operate underwater. An idea most billionaires would treat as a joke, but Musk viewed as a prototype. Then there is the vehicle that no billionaire has ever claimed, the Tesla Roadster, launched into space. It wasn't just a publicity stunt. The payload itself cost several $1 million to build, integrate, and mount on the Falcon Heavy, the world's most powerful rocket at the time. Instead of placing a corporate satellite or scientific instrument, Musk launched a car with the message, "Don't panic," on the dashboard, sending it into permanent orbit around the sun. Is the most photographed object in space and one of the most expensive billboards in history, viewed by hundreds of millions worldwide. Only Musk would consider the vacuum of space a marketing channel. Each vehicle represents a philosophy. The Gulfstream is about collapsing time. The submarine car is about bending imagination. The Roadster in orbit is about rewriting the boundaries of where human objects can exist. For Musk, mobility isn't just transportation, it is myth-making. It is the art of turning machines into messages. While other billionaires build museums for their cars, Musk sends his into the stars. While others modify vehicles for comfort, he modifies them to provoke innovation. And while many view assets as trophies, Musk treats them as experiments, prototypes of a future where mobility is limitless, where borders blur, and where technology becomes a form of storytelling. In Musk's world, movement itself is a luxury. But unlike traditional luxury, it isn't measured in leather seats or horsepower. It's measured in how far humanity can advance when one man refuses to stay still. Funding the impossible, Neuralink, Boring Company, and Twitter/X. For most billionaires, investments are spreadsheets, risk forecasts, quarterly returns, controlled horizons. But for Elon Musk, money is a launch pad, and every dollar he deploys is a fuse connected to a future only he seems able to see. Nowhere is that clearer than in the 3 ventures he bankrolls with a fearlessness that would make even Wall Street pause: Neuralink, the Boring Company, and Twitter/X. He began with Neuralink not as a vanity project, but as a bet on the biological limits of the human body. When traditional investors hesitated, Musk didn't blink. He injected $100 million of his own fortune into a company that did not yet have a product, a roadmap, or even proof that the technology could work outside a lab mouse. Neuralink's mission wasn't modest. It aimed to build a brain-meter interface capable of restoring movement to paralyzed patients, correcting neurological disorders, and eventually extending cognition beyond the skull. In Musk's framing, it wasn't a medical device. It was humanity's next operating system. And he was willing to fund the entire early stage himself because the return he sought wasn't profit, it was evolution. Then came the Boring Company, a venture that began as a joke tweet about solving traffic by digging tunnels under Los Angeles. But Musk has a habit of treating humor as prophecy. What started with a backyard test pit turned into a tunneling enterprise securing contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Each tunnel required custom-engineered machinery, ventilation systems, and autonomous transport pods. Projects that devoured capital at a pace only a billionaire could sustain. While skeptics laughed, Musk wrote the checks, turning internet sarcasm into physical infrastructure. To him, moving millions of commuters underground wasn't urban innovation, it was survival in a century where cities suffocate under their own population density. And then, the most dramatic plunge of all, Musk's $44 billion acquisition of Twitter, rebranded into X. It wasn't simply a purchase. It was the takeover of a global information artery. He absorbed a company burning more than $4 million per day, slashed operations, rewired its algorithms, and rebuilt the platform into a personal battleground where geopolitical leaders, CEOs, entertainers, and critics converge. Musk didn't buy X to own a social network. He bought it to steer the public square, a digital empire whose influence is larger than many nations. What ties these ventures together isn't technology, it's Musk's willingness to spend like time is running out. Neuralink chases the mind, the boring company reshapes the world beneath our feet, and X attempts to redefine how civilization communicates. Each consumes staggering amounts of capital. Each flirts with failure, and each reveals a man investing not in companies, but in futures so audacious they make even other billionaires hesitate. For Musk, wealth is not the reward, it is the fuel, and he intends to burn every gallon of it building the impossible. Starbase, the one thing Elon has that even Trump envies. While most billionaires spend their fortunes building legacies rooted firmly on Earth, golden towers, branded resorts, private islands, Elon Musk poured his wealth into a place designed for humanity to leave the planet entirely. Tucked along the lonely coastline of Boca Chica, Texas, sits Starbase, a private spaceport valued in the tens of billions of dollars. A facility so audacious that even Donald Trump, a man known for skyscrapers plated in gold, reportedly felt a rare moment of shock when he learned what Musk was constructing. From the moment you arrive, Starbase doesn't feel like an industrial site, it feels like a frontier settlement preparing for the next chapter of human existence. Giant stainless steel rockets rise above the dunes like futuristic monuments. Factories the size of city blocks churn out rocket segments using robotic welding systems that Musk personally invested hundreds of millions of dollars into. Raptor engines, each costing over $1 million to produce, sit in rows like mechanical beasts waiting for ignition. Fuel tank farms stretching wider than football fields hold the methane and oxygen that will power rockets worth $2 billion each toward orbit. And then there's the launch tower, one of the most surreal engineering structures in America. Built for more than $250 million, it stands tall enough to rival a skyscraper and is equipped with massive steel arms designed to catch a returning rocket booster. No government agency ever dared attempt this. Musk did, and he paid for it. But the most shocking detail is not the machinery, it's Musk's lifestyle inside this futuristic compound. Instead of living in a mansion, he chose a $50,000 prefab home placed a short walk from the launch pad. While billionaires typically purchase penthouses overlooking oceans, Musk wakes up to the sound of pressure valves hissing and raptors roaring to life. Trump built Trump Tower. Musk sleeps beside humanity's gateway to Mars. The answer contrast is exactly what makes Starbase so powerful. It is not a symbol of wealth, but of obsession. Every day at Starbase looks like controlled chaos. Prototype rockets roll out several times a month, each costing tens of millions in steel, avionics, heat shield tiles, and engine testing. Failure is expected. Explosions are routine. Progress is non-negotiable. Musk's team builds, launches, crashes, analyzes, and rebuilds, all under a timeline he often describes as urgent for civilization. Starbase consumes time, talent, and money at a rate few companies, let alone individuals, could ever sustain. Yet Musk funds enormous portions of it directly, treating Starbase not as an investment but as a necessity. And this is the part that makes Trump pause. Trump controls political influence and real estate empires, but Musk is building the infrastructure for a multi-planet species. Trump's legacy is power on Earth. Musk is trying to create the option for humanity to leave Earth. So let me ask you, if you had billions at your disposal, would you build monuments that shine on Earth, or a launch pad capable of carrying humanity to a new world? Comment below and tell me which future you would choose. Elon Musk's spending teaches us three striking lessons about power in the modern world. First, money becomes unstoppable when it's used to build systems, not trophies. Musk pours billions into rockets, AI, and global infrastructure because these assets grow more valuable over time. Second, Simplicity is a weapon. By living in a $50,000 house, Musk removes distractions and channels every resource into long-term dominance. Third, real wealth isn't measured in luxury, but in leverage. A $70 million jet, a $44 billion platform, and a private spaceport don't just show status, they shape civilizations. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective on how Musk uses his billions, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Billionaire Secret. And stay tuned for part 2, where we'll uncover the hidden financial networks and quiet power alliances that fuel Musk's empire behind the scenes.